Hello everybody and welcome back to the TechGraphs video series on how to build a 2016 Retrosheet database. I am TechGraphs Managing Editor David Temple, and this is part 2 of the video series. In part 1 we did a bit of housekeeping, I guess, so to speak. We downloaded and installed some of the programs we'll need to get all this up and running. We of course installed the MySQL server on your workstation, as well as a couple utilities like wget and 7-zip, and we also got some of the batch files needed to kind of pull down all this data and parse it out, and we got that from the TechGraphs GitHub site. And before we get too far into this, I do want to point out that I made a bit of an error in those batch files. Nothing huge, but something that we're going to have to remedy. If you watched part 1 of this series, which you should obviously do, otherwise you're going to be a little bit lost, I had you go out and pull some files down from our GitHub site. There were a couple things that I missed basically in those files, and we need to kind of rectify that before we go before we get too much further into this. All the other stuff that we did, the downloading and installing of all those programs, that's totally cool. There's no work you have to do on that. We just basically need to kind of fix those couple mistakes that I made, or oversights, I guess I should say, that I made. So if you remember from the first video, we went and downloaded some files and extracted them into our C Retrosheet folder. And this is where the problems lie, right? And so I could have you go in and kind of edit those files. One of them was a SQL file that I overlooked, and etc. I could have you kind of go around and edit those, but that's just kind of a pain in the butt. And to be honest, the files are so small that we should be able to download them really quickly. So what we're going to do is just re-download. I've already fixed them on our GitHub site. So if you are watching this back to back in a fairly close manner, and you've made it past the deadline basically for my mistake, you don't need to do this, but you might as well, just in case, depending on when you watch this video. So anyway, I'll stop rambling. We'll just get to it. So let's open up your web browser. I got Firefox open here, and we'll just go to our GitHub site. It's github.com/techgraphs. Pretty easy to remember. So we'll just go to that, and you'll remember that it was this repository. It was the 2016 Retrosheet SQL Windows. So we'll open that up, and all we'll do is just download a zip. And this is just going to ask us to save or open it. We'll go ahead and save it for now. And I think I already have one in here. Yeah, but that's fine. So you just open up this, and this will open either in 7-zip or possibly your Windows zip file manager, or perhaps even another file manager if you have one. But we don't even need to extract this whole thing. We just need to open, or kind of double click on it, and we need to get the directory that we want. You can ignore these two here. We just need to get the proper folder, either for 64-bit architecture or 32-bit architecture. And if you forgot how we found that out, we go to the Start menu and we right click on Computer and we choose Properties. And here in the system type, mine's listed here, 64-bit operating system. If you have an older computer, you might be 32-bit. Most people are probably going to be 64, but that's how you check if you're unsure. So I would just select the 64-bit and then choose Extract. And then it's going to ask me where I want to extract it, and I'd put it right in my C drive Retrosheet, right? This is what I would do. I actually already did this. I did a little bit of prep work before I made this video, so I'm not actually going to do it right now. But that's what you would do. You'd click OK, and it would extract those files for you. It may ask you if you want to overwrite it, because there are probably some files in there already. Just choose yes for all those, or yes all if you have that option. And then that will put those good files back on there. It'll have all the correct stuff that we need. So we'll close that, and we'll get right into it. I'll go ahead and go back into that file, or that folder I should say, C Retrosheet, and we're going to jump right into the data folder, and we're going to go into the zipped folder. Now all this stuff you won't have yet, because I've already done this kind of ahead of time. This is a fairly time-intensive process. I mean, I'm not talking days or anything like that, but if you're watching this via video, it would be kind of boring just to watch the command prompt kind of scroll through all these files. So I actually pre-downloaded all these just for the sake of time and to make the video a little bit more concise. So the only files you would have in the zipped folder are this Retrosheet zip files and get zip files. The first one is just a TXT, a text document. The second one is a batch file. So you don't need to do this, and I kind of went over this in part 1, but just as a short refresher, I'm just going to show you. You don't need to follow along with this part. But if I edit this batch file, basically this file will run in the command prompt, and it will do a bunch of commands in batches, I guess is why that's why they call it a batch file. In the Unix Linux world, this would be known as a shell script. It'd look a little bit different, obviously, but same kind of idea. Basically, it's just one file that you have to run to do a whole bunch of work, right? And so what this batch file is doing, it's saying, hey, use wget. That's that program that we downloaded and installed in the first video. Use wget, and it's passing some arguments here, and it's saying basically download everything that's listed in this Retrosheet zip files.txt folder. And I'll show you that in a second. It's a list of links, basically. So it's saying go out to all these links and download those files. And then please use 7-zip, passing some arguments, of course. And then it's saying, put those files that we downloaded, unzip them using 7-zip, and put those in the Retrosheet data unzipped folder. So that's basically what that batch file is doing. And if we go in here real quick, again, we went over this in video 1, but this is the list of links that wget's going to use, and that's what that batch file says. It says, hey, grab this one, then grab this one, then grab this one, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, all the way down to 2015. Still, well, those spaces won't go away, but that's okay. I think we'll be just fine. So we'll close that. So all you need to do is just double click this this batch file right here. I won't do it again because I've kind of pre-done this already, but what it'll do is it'll fill this directory with zip files, and then if we go back one, and then in the unzipped folder, we'll see all these. These are basically Retrosheet files. Retrosheet kind of has their own special file extension and their own special kind of formatting of files, and that's what that's after it's being unzipped, it's getting put in here, and it puts all these special Retrosheet files in here. Retrosheet started, I wasn't there at the very beginning, but from my understanding, Retrosheet started, I mean, it's a community project basically to kind of standardize and collect all the box scores from baseball games going all the way back to at least to as of right now, back to 1952. So this is like this is the Detroit file for 1952. So if I take a quick look at this, you'll see it's in all kind of special formatting, and it's got all these kind of comma separated values, and it's got some player names in there, and this is some box score comments. Queen Juliana and Prince Bernard of the Netherlands attended but left after second inning, etc. So this is basically just a huge list of box scores. This starts in the second one, so this was from April 16th, it looks like, of 1952. So anyway, they're all specially formatted for the Retrosheet style, and the Retrosheet folks provided a Windows program, an exe, that you could run, and kind of one of the original purposes of it was to run this program and actually print out an old box score. So if I really wanted a box score, from April 16th, 1952 that Detroit played in, I could use that program to go out to that file, pull down all the data, and print it out. Not super helpful for us because we're not really interested in printing out box scores anymore, thanks to Baseball Reference and things like that. But we do still want this data, and we want to manipulate it a little bit, right? And so what happened was that there was another project that kind of spun off of this called the Chadwick Project. And what Chadwick did is they basically wrote their own kind of program that would allow you to do more things with this data and kind of export it into certain modes, right? Export it into certain fashions. And if we go back to the Retrosheet folder and this common folder and then programs, you'll see CW box, CW comment, CW event, game, log, sub. These are all programs written by the Chadwick people, the folks at the Chadwick Project. It's a program written in C, basically, and it's been compiled here for Windows. And what this will allow us to do is manipulate that data, look at that data that's already pre-formatted in the Retrosheet style, and then kind of export it into our own needs, or for our own needs, so that we can do things like import them into databases. So if we go back, I kind of got off on a tangent there, sorry about that, but if we go back here to the data folder and then the unzipped folder, you'll see these three more batch files, CW event, CW game, CW sub. And I already kind of went over this in part 1, but again, just a refresher, if I edit this file, you'll see that it's another batch file and it's saying, hey, use this CW event program, this Chadwick program, and it's passing a bunch of arguments basically saying which fields it wants to get, and you know, the year obviously would be 2015, and then it's saying, you know, parse all the data from any 2015 event files, and it's using some wildcard selectors here, and then take the output of that and put it into this CSV file. So basically use CW event, grab all the 2015 data and put it in this 2015 CSV file. That's kind of the gist of what's happening. And these are leveraging, you know, those Chadwick programs that I mentioned. So again, these won't be here on your folder. Well, actually, no, I'm sorry, they will, because by the time you get here, these will all be unzipped. So what you'll want to do is just double click, and again, I've already done this, so I'm not really going to do it again, but you just double click these 3 batch files. You know, you double click one, let it run, double click another, and that will parse all that data and put it into the CSV files. These will, I should say, take a bit of time. It'll take longer than it would have taken to download the original Retrosheet data. The CW sub and CW game they're not too terrible. They'll take a little bit of time, but the CW event is going to take some time. Basically, it's parsing every play that's been recorded in a baseball game since 1952 and creating a separate CSV line for it. So it takes a little bit of time. Your mileage may vary, of course, and it all depends on the power of your system. This is a somewhat memory-intensive process. It's doing a lot of reading and writing from memory. So if you do have any other programs on the machine that you're doing this on, I would recommend closing them if you can, just to kind of free up any resources that you have. But once all this is done, and it'll take, you know, probably 30 minutes or so, 20 to 30 minutes. If you go back in your data folder and check your parsed folder, you can ignore this. I had to put this in here just so it would have a file, so GitHub would upload it. So it doesn't even matter. But you'll see here's all 1952, 53, 54. So this is all the event data. And if we scroll down, here's all the games data. And then if we scroll down, I bet we'll find there it is, all the sub data. So these are the actual files that are going to get imported into our SQL database, right? So these are the things that we need. So now that that's all done, again, it's going to take a little while on your end, and I kind of did it ahead of time to save time on the video, and then I ended up rambling, so I probably could have done it in real time anyway. But what we'll do now is we'll just go ahead and launch SQL Yog. And remember, SQL Yog is basically the front end to our Retrosheet database, right? Or the front end to our SQL database, I should say. This kind of helps us interact with the SQL database that runs in the background, the SQL server that runs in the background. So the first thing we'll have to do, actually, now that I've opened this, well, we can keep it open, but there's one more thing that we have to do, and it involves editing a file, which doesn't seem like too big of a deal, but is actually a little bit of a pain in the butt, considering how they set it up. So this wasn't a problem in older versions of MySQL Server, but it is now. Basically, if we were to run the import commands that we wanted, we get an error saying that, hey, this is pulling files down from folders that we don't have selected as a safe, quote unquote, safe folder, right? So it's a security measure. It's basically preventing, rogue programs, malware and the like, from running commands against MySQL Server and importing a bunch of weird data or perhaps even exporting a bunch of weird data that we don't really want to authorize, right? So I'll show you kind of what's going on in right here. But what we're going to have to do is edit a small INI file, but we have to do it a special way. So the first thing we have to do is we actually have to go into our services. So I'm in Windows 7, so I can just search right in here. If you're in Windows 8 or 10, you know how to search from there. But basically, if you just type in services, it should bring up that top menu, top option there. You may have to type in services.msc. It's the same same thing, depending. But we want to make sure we get into this list of services. And these are all the services that are running or at least installed on Windows. So if you click anywhere on this list to select one and then press the M key, that'll jump you down to the M listings. And we're going to want to find MySQL. It'll probably be something like MySQL 57, which stands for 5.7. You want to right click on that and choose stop. Basically, we can't make the changes to this file while the service is running, or we'd have to restart it anyway. So we might as well just stop. And this isn't deleting anything or uninstalling MySQL or anything like that. Basically, we're just stopping the Windows service, and we're only doing it temporarily. So you can see now my status has changed from pending stop to stopped. So this service is no longer running. We'll fire that up in just a second. But the next thing we need to do is let's just do a search for Notepad. I'm just going to do this in Notepad because it's pretty easy. You can use Notepad++ or any other text editor that you like. I'm just going to do it in Notepad for simplicity's sake, but the main thing that we have to remember to do is actually right-click on this result. And of course, I'll just show you. If you go to like something like all programs, accessories, it's in here too. However you want to get there. But I'm a huge search guy. It comes from my D menu leanings in the Linux world. But if you just search for Notepad and right-click on here, and choose Run as Administrator. This is what we have to do. No matter how you get to Notepad, we have to make sure we run it as an administrator. And we have to do this now. There's no elegant way to kind of switch to administrator mode once we've opened Notepad. So we're running this as an administrator. You'll get this UAC box. It may ask you to enter your password depending on your Windows settings, but we'll just power through that, and it opens up a blank Notepad editor. Now we need to go out and find that file. So we're going to go to File, Open. And I'm already there, but I'll show you kind of how I got there. It starts at your C drive, and in your C drive is a folder called Program Data. Now, you may not see Program Data if you don't have, because Program Data is what Windows calls a hidden folder. Basically, it's there, but by default, it doesn't show you that it's there, so you don't go messing with stuff in that folder, because it does have a lot of important information in there that help your programs run. So if you see this folder, you can just go ahead and double-click it. If you don't, it means you don't have hidden files, the option to show hidden files, which is fine. There's kind of a shortcut way we can get there. So we just go up here in the address bar, we click in here, and it's kind of then just acts like your web browser address bar. So you just want to go and C:/, leave that there, and then just type in program data. And you can scroll, you can scroll in here if you want, or you can just type it all one word. Case doesn't really matter in this point, and then just hit enter. That'll bring in your program data folder. So again, if you don't have this file, just click here in the address bar and just navigate out to program data. That's where we want to be. And then we'll double click MySQL. And we will open this folder, this MySQL Server folder, and then we need to change, because right now it's only searching for text documents. That's the default file type for Notepad. So we actually want to change this, click this drop-down menu to All Files, and then you'll see this My file. This file, the full name is actually my.ini file. But this is the one we want to edit. So just select that one and click Open. And then it'll bring up just a bunch of options basically for that file. We don't need to worry really about anything except one line. So I'm just going to go search for it rather than scroll through. And I'm going to search for PRIV. And then just hit enter, and that'll bring you down to secure file priv settings. So we can close that. And this second line here is what we want. So basically this is saying that the only folder that SQL Server will allow to be uploaded from is C, program data, MySQL, this whole thing. So only files in this folder are allowed to be uploaded to your SQL Server. Well, if you remember, all our files are in C:/Retrosheet. So we would have to move all those files to this folder and then change all the scripts, the SQL scripts, to reflect that change. And I don't really want to do that. So what we're going to do is basically just turn this setting off. And the way we do that is by something called commenting. This is basically a set of instructions for the program, right? And so it's reading all these lines and it's setting variables and stuff on these lines, right? So these are all settings that the program is using. But you will also notice, I should say, that there are a bunch of lines with these number signs or hashtags or whatever you want to call them in front, and those are called comments. That's basically telling the program, hey, ignore these. These are just notes for the person reading this file. It's not for the computer to read. It's just for the people looking at this file to read. So it'll skip right over them if it has this number sign in front of it. So that's all we're going to do with this line. I'm just going to add a number sign there, and I didn't really need to do that, but I'd like things to line up when I'm looking at these kind of things. So anyway, so it has to look like this. Just make sure that this is in front right here. This is the important thing. And if that's there, then it's going to skip over that setting, and it will allow us to upload files from anywhere, which is what we want. Now, if this was a server that we were running, in a business or some sort of production server for a project we were on, maybe we want to leave this setting on, for security reasons. But again, security is not a huge issue here because this is all publicly available data anyway, right? So put that number sign there, and then you just go File, Save. And that'll save the file. And if we ran it as administrator, it shouldn't give us a permission denied warning. And then we'll just close it. And that'll bring us back to our services screen here. So now we can just right click on this and start the service back up. There you go. And now the service is started. So the MySQL server is running again. So we can close this. And if you close this, you didn't have to, but if you did, just open it right back up. Okay, so now that all that extra nonsense has been taken care of, we can finally start loading some stuff into our database, which is why we're here in the first place. So the first thing we need to do is actually create the database. So we'll do that by just selecting this root localhost menu option up here, right-clicking on that, and just choosing Create Database. And I'm going to be very creative and just call mine Retrosheet. Excellent. So now we've created the database, but there's no data in here. There's actually not even any tables in here. This is a totally blank kind of placeholder at this point. So the first thing we need to do is kind of get the syntax set for this. And we could go in here and kind of edit, alter the database and change a bunch of stuff. But we actually have a quick way of doing that, and that's a SQL schema. So we'll go to the Tools menu up here and choose Execute SQL Script, and click these little 3 buttons to navigate out, and make sure you're at your C Retrosheet directory. And the file that we want is the Retrosheet table schema. Schema is basically like a blueprint for a SQL database. It's saying, hey, these are the tables that we need to have in the database, and here's the format of these tables and what kind of data can be put in these tables, whether it be numbers or numbers and letters, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Again, we can edit that all manually, but we have this handy schema file to do it for us. So we'll just click that, click that, and then click Open, and then click Execute. And we'll run into this kind of scary warning a few times here in this video. All this is saying is that, hey, the Retrosheet database is selected, and if you run this command, it's going to make some changes to this database. Is that really what you want to do? Just kind of a safety net there. But that is what we want to do. That's why we're here, right? So we'll just go ahead and click Yes. And it'll execute, and it'll say import successful. Cool. And we'll click done. Now, if we minimize this and, we may have to refresh with this button up here, this refresh objects browser, we'll see that we now have tables. And if we went and edited these tables or kind of looked at the settings of these tables, you'll see that, they all have their own special fields, like these columns here. And, each column has its own format and things like that. So all that work's been done for us, which is great. So now we need to actually populate data into these tables. So we'll go to that same menu, Tools, Execute SQL Script. We'll navigate back out, and the next thing we want to do is actually go into this Loaders folder. And these are basically the SQL commands. They're actually very small files. What they're doing basically is saying, hey, all those files that are in that parsed folder, basically map all the data in those files to the data in the SQL tables. So these are basically just pulling that data in there. So we'll start small with the subs.sql command. We'll just go ahead and click Open, Execute, and it'll start running. This one's pretty quick. There's a fair amount of data in there, but it's pretty small. So we'll see that that's done. We'll click Done here, and I'll just show you real quick, and we'll get more into how to kind of view this stuff in the third video. But if I kind of open this table, you can see that we have game ID, inning count. So basically, April 18th, that game we were talking about in Boston, in the 5th inning, with the home team was batting. This gentleman got subbed in basically as the pitcher, and oh no, yeah, oops, pitcher batting ninth. Anyway, I kind of accidentally clicked. Well, anyway, I'll go back. Did it keep all that stuff? All right, came back. Cool. So yeah, he was the field. He was number 1 in the field, number 9 in the lineup, and he was this guy was the one removed, and he was also number 1 in the field, and blah blah blah. And again, we'll get more into what all this means, but we can see that we have a whole bunch of stuff in here, right? Look at all these substitutions that happened. Excellent. So now we know that that worked. So now I need to fill this games. Well, actually, what we're going to do is put it in this games BCK file or table, excuse me. But we don't even have to worry about. We could kind of click anywhere in here. It doesn't really matter because we're just going to go to the Tools menu and execute SQL script, and we're going to pull this games SQL file. So no matter what we selected over here, it knows to make changes to the games BCK table. So we'll go ahead and click open and execute, and then it'll pull all that data down. Excellent. So now we can double check that. We can go and open this in a new tab, and we can see all the games. The year ID is set at 0, and that's actually going to get fixed. The Retrosheet data doesn't actually have the year. I mean, it does in this game ID, right? So you can see BOS, that's Boston 1952, that's the year. But it doesn't actually have a separate field for year. So right now we're defaulting to 0, and then we'll run another SQL command that will actually pull the data out of this field and put it in that year ID field there. And then you can see, here's the date and the game count. This is, basically these two were double headers, right? These were played on the same day, but it was a double header. This is game 1, this is game 2. If there's no double header, it's just a 0. And it was played on a Friday, and there's no start time listed because these are pretty old. That will obviously be listed more as the, as the data is more recent. Was it at daytime? Who was the, away team? Who's the home team? Who's the starting pitcher? Who are the umpires? Blah, blah, blah. It goes all the way over there. So that data is all good to go. So now I'm going to go back here, execute SQL script, and we'll execute the big one here, and that's the events SQL file. Click open here. This one's going to take a while. And in fact, I think I'm actually going to pause the video just so you don't have to watch the progress go. But this is basically pulling every single, kind of like I said earlier, every single play from every baseball game since 1952, and it's pulling all that data and creating a separate entry in the database for every play. So it takes a little bit of time. So I'll go ahead and click execute here. And we'll get some spinnies, and then we'll see we're at 1%, and this will kind of crawl along, 3%. Like I said, this is going to take some time. So just sit tight. Don't click stop. Don't do anything. Just let it run. We're talking maybe 10 minutes here, but 10 minutes that we don't really need to have on the video. So I'm going to stop this video right now, and then we will jump cut to the not too distant future, and we'll kind of look at what's in that events table, and then also do a little bit of data cleanup. So that's coming at you, and we'll see you in just a sec. All right, we are back, and our events.sql file has been processed. This is all good news. So now we're going to click done, and we're just going to check this table real quick. Check that in a new tab, and yes, there it is. And again, these year IDs, this one defaults to 2000, but we're also going to clean that up in our next step. But we can see that every event basically is logged here. So this table is huge. All right, so the next thing we have to do is we're going to execute another SQL script. You can see a pattern here. We're going to navigate out back to our main Retrosheet folder, and we're going to load this partition file. So basically this partition file, this does two things. It kind of tidies up this year situation that we have going, and it also kind of segments out the data in those tables so that basically your queries run quite a bit faster. I mean, that's the whole point, right? So we don't have to get into the nitty gritty of it. You can actually edit, open the file and kind of look at it in a text editor if you want to see exactly what's going on. But you don't really have to worry about it. It's just a kind of an important part to make sure that our queries run as fast as possible. So we're going to kind of clean up this year data stuff, and then also partition out these entries kind of by year, actually, is how they're going to get partitioned out. So again, just go ahead and click execute. And this will also take a while, probably just as long as loading your events. So again, in the interest of keeping this video under, I don't know, 600 hours, it seems like we've been going now, I'm going to go ahead and stop this recording, and we will once again jump cut to the not too distant future when this whole file has been processed. So we will see you soon. All right, everybody, we are done with the partitioning SQL file. You will notice maybe that my clock jumped ahead quite a bit. I found another error that I have fixed, and it's all been taken care of, so you won't even know about it. The files have already been fixed if you re-downloaded those files from our GitHub page. Basically, add an extra parenthesis. Yeah, parenthesis. So we're all good to go now. And then we just go ahead and click done. There's just a couple more things we have to do. First one is we have to do one more SQL script, and we'll navigate out back to our main Retrosheet folder, and we're just going to load up the lookup codes. So this is a pretty quick one. We'll just go ahead and execute that there, and that's all done. And to see everything that we've done, we'll just make sure that this is selected, and we're going to again refresh our object browser. This just kind of refreshes everything. So now we'll see all our lookup codes, and we'll go over that in the third video. So now what we need to do, we can see that the events table is all populated and the years are all correct, so it's a little better off than this _BCK table. So we're just going to go ahead and remove these two BCK tables because they have served their purpose. So we're going to go right click on that table, go to more table operations, and choose drop table from database. And we'll say, are you sure? And we're sure, as long as we make sure it's the _BCK files that we're getting rid of, or BCK tables. We'll do the same with the games. More table operations, drop table from database. There we go. And we are all set. Our database is fully loaded with all the data that we need. So the third video will go over kind of some tips and tricks on how to search and query this database. I didn't really include that last year in this series, and a lot of people have asked for it. So kind of dropped the ball on that one, but I'll make sure to get some examples going for you guys so we can at least get some templates on how to work with this data, and we'll go over kind of what's in these lookup codes as well, because there's certainly some important information in there, but it's slightly cryptic, so we need to make sure we know exactly what everything means. So we'll stop here and make sure to check out video 3. If you have any questions or comments, just hit up our page on TechGraphs, or if you run into any problems, feel free to let me know on Twitter, and I will do my best to address those issues. I'm at David G. Temple if you wanna follow me, or at least talk to me on Twitter if you have any questions about this. So we made a lot of progress today, and we're gonna stop here, and then in part 3 we're gonna go over how to actually query this monster. So for TechGraphs, I'm David Temple, and we will see you next time.